So the calendar, so we go through, position 1 was indicted.
Okay, so I'll go position 1, different numbers. Cordell Canty, we're hearing that. Nathan Huff, both Nathan Huff cases have been indicted, and Christopher Troop.
Correct.
We're hearing Canty and Franco.
Franco, went
Yes.
All right, and we'll just take that one out. This first one seems a little less complicated. It's like driving without a license, so we'll take it first.
Okay. Thank you.
And she said she could take you. Wrestle, she said she could arm wrestle you and take you, that she won anyway, so.
All right, Judge.
All right, you got Canty, you want to come on up? All right, this is 22 CP 213506 Cordell Canty, 118 days without indictment. I addressed bond on January 31st. There's a $4,500 good bond on theft by receiving stolen property, driving without a valid license, and headlights not turned on as required. Officer, you want to raise your right hand? Okay.
Raise your hand. Do you swear upon the testimony you record that truth and whole truth, no much truth, nothing?
I do, yes.
All right, please state your name and spell it for the record.
Officer Tucker, Tucker, last name Byrne, Byrne.
Good afternoon, Officer Byrne. Where are you employed?
Fulton County Police Department.
How long have you been employed there?
I've been employed with this department for 7 months.
Okay. And were you working in that capacity on October 26, 2022?
Yes,
Were you post-certified on that date?
yes,
Did you become aware of a Cordell Canty on that date?
yes.
How did you become aware of Cordell Canty?
On that day, I observed a black Chrysler 300 driving with no lights on and no tag displayed. When the driver was stopped, Mr. Canty got out the vehicle. I advised him to get back inside the vehicle. He was asked to prove identification. He said he did not have a license to drive. The license plate was in the back windshield, partially obstructed. I was able to run the tag. It came back stolen out of Tennessee.
Okay. When you say partially obstructed, what do you mean by that?
It was pushed down in between like the back part of the trunk and the windshield to where you could partially only see the numbers and digits.
Okay.
Well, the letters and digits.
Were you able, you stated that he indicated he did not have a license, is that correct?
Yes.
Were you able to confirm that?
Yes, through when he was ran by name and date of birth on GCIC, it did confirm he was not licensed to drive.
Okay. And you indicated that this vehicle was stolen. How did you confirm that?
GCIC ran it through their database. It came back stolen out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. They provided a case number and the date of theft was 10/25/2022.
Okay. Were you able to find out the identity of the owner of the vehicle?
Yes, when I called the owner of the vehicle was left running on the side of the road. He came back out, it wasn't there.
Okay. Do you have the owner's name?
The Ricky Harris.
Okay. Did Ricky Harris indicate if he gave permission for anyone to take the vehicle?
No.
He did not give permission?
Did not give permission, no.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. And what was the location of this stop?
Wendell Drive Southwest and Fulton Industrial Boulevard.
Okay. Is that in Fulton County?
Yes.
And you said you spoke to Cordell Canty. Did Cordell Canty make any other statements besides not having a license?
He made a statement that it was his friend's vehicle, and when he was asked who his friend was, he was unable to provide a name. That was documented on body camera.
Okay, thank you. And in the warrant for theft by receiving, you stated that the value of this vehicle was at least $5,000, but less than $24,999. What did you base that valuation on?
Through Kelly Blue Book,
Okay,
we just ran the average numbers of the Chrysler 300s, and it ran roughly between those two numbers.
okay. And what was the year model again, and the year and the make?
2013 Chrysler 300.
Thank you. Okay. And in the warrant for theft by receiving, you said that the accused viewer should have known that the property was stolen. How did you come to that determination?
The vehicle had no keys and property of somebody else. Mr. Canty could not identify the property inside the vehicle.
Okay. You're saying like items inside the
Items inside the vehicle that were not, that somebody who's driving their own vehicle should know is there.
Okay. Do you remember what those items were specifically? I know it's been a few months. Or
It was a lot of miscellaneous stuff, clothes, shoes, that
Okay.
type of stuff.
Thank you. Do you see Cordell Canty in court today?
I do, yes.
Everybody remove their mask.
Could you please identify Cordell Canty for the court?
He's going to be sitting over there at that desk or
Good.
table.
Could you just
Right.
describe him a little bit for the court?
Oh, yeah, black male, short cut with a beard. He's got the blue shirt on.
Okay, thank you. Let the court know for the record that the witness in this case is identified the defendant.
Noted.
No further questions for this witness, subject to redirect.
Cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Are you the officer that initially responded to the 911 call?
Yes, it wasn't a 911 call. It was just a traffic stop.
A traffic stop? Okay, my apologies. And were you the only officer there?
Officer Hill arrived after the male was detained.
Okay. And were you all wearing your body worn cameras?
Yes,
Was that footage preserved and saved for discovery?
yes, it's in the evidence.com database.
Okay, and you said that when you got to the vehicle, that the vehicle was left running on the side of the road by the owner, is that correct?
Yes, in Tennessee is what the owner told me.
And you also stated that there were no cars in the vehicle. Was this a push to start vehicle?
I am unaware.
Okay, and then you also stated that there was property of someone else inside of the vehicle. Can you explain the type of items that were inside of that vehicle?
Yes, from what I can recall, it was clothing, some shoes, and other miscellaneous things.
Right, and when you spoke to Mr. Canty, he said that the vehicle belonged to a friend. Was that correct?
Yeah, he said it was a friend's vehicle.
And did he mention the name of his friend?
No,
Did you ask where the friend may have lived or if he was where he was en route to?
yeah, Mr. Canty stated on body cam he was coming back from Tennessee from a mental facility.
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Did Mr. Canty ever state where he acquired the vehicle?
Up in Tennessee,
He stated that he acquired it in Tennessee?
yes,
Okay,
which was also documented on body camera.
thank you. No further questions for this witness.
Anything else, Ms. Kimberly?
No, Your Honor.
All right, officer. You need the officer for anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Stay safe out there, officer.
Appreciate it.
All right, argument.
Your Honor, the state submits on the evidence. However, the state would note that given that the defendant stated that he acquired the vehicle in Tennessee, that this would be properly charged as 1688, theft by receiving items stolen from out of state.
And Your Honor, we'll submit to the evidence.
All right, there's probable cause on all three. Bond was addressed on the 31st of January. It's $4,500 bond. Is there a reason you want to address it again? Just because we're here?
Your Honor, no, he has been, so he is, I don't have to address the bond, but we are going to seek a UJR because he is trying to get into Better Way program. We're just waiting on the official letter stating that he's been accepted.
Okay, when you get it, email.
That's
consent.
perfect. Thank you, Your
All
Honor.
right, best of luck to you, sir. Ms. Chavez.
Your Honor, that concludes my business today. I have you excused.
Yes, have a good week.
I'm going to stay around for a little bit, but we have a meeting at 2, just in case yours runs longer.
Yeah, come on up, Detective.
Yeah.
Ms. Chavez. You swear or affirm you'll translate from English to Spanish, Spanish to English to the best of your knowledge, skills, and abilities? Okay. Yeah, you come on up.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate it.
Oh, you swear or affirm testimony about to give the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do, Your Honor.
All right, state your name and spell it for court, please. Court reporter.
That's Detective Jason Pearson, Pearson.
All right,
And I work with the City of Sandy Springs Police Department.
all right, as soon as they get him up here. Mr. Rhodes, I'm assuming you want to address bond. I think there's no bond on this.
Yes, Judge.
So Detective, just remember when she's doing that, just speak in shorter sentences so she can interpret. Okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
I mess up myself sometimes. All right. 22 CP 214006. Yair Franco, 99 days without indictment. And right now there is no bond, so we'll address bond after the hearing. So it's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 counts of possess or control any material depicting a minor in a sexually explicit conduct. 1, 2, yeah, there's, yes. Oh, 22 CP, you need to, 22 CP 214006. 5 counts of possess or control any material depicting a minor in sexually explicit conduct. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Detective Pearson.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
How long have you been with the Sandy Springs Police Department?
Since the inception of the police department, from July of 2005, I think, is when the department started. Before that, I worked with the Fulton County Police Department from 2002.
Okay. And what is your current assignment with the Sandy Springs Police Department?
I work with the Criminal Investigation Division as a fraud detective.
Okay. And how long have you been so employed as a detective with the Criminal Investigations Division?
I made the transfer in 2017. I believe it was maybe September, October 2017.
Okay. And are you post-certified?
I am.
And were you post-certified on October 12th of 2022?
Yes, I was.
I'm going to direct your attention to that date, Detective. Did you receive, well, let me strike that. Let me ask, were you working that day?
I was, yes.
Okay. And did you receive any calls for assistance that day?
On that evening of October the 12th, I was instructed by a CID supervisor to respond to the 5600 block of Roswell Road in reference to a person shot.
All right. And do you know approximately what time you arrived out on scene on that day?
I'm not sure exactly. I would say around 11 o'clock that night, just based off recollection.
Okay. And where in fact did you report? What was the address?
The address listed on the police report is 5674 Roswell Road, but just to know that the shooting incident location was an actual vehicle. The vehicle was in the southbound lanes of Roswell Road, just north of Lake Placid Drive, if that makes sense.
Yes, and how far away is that from the 5674 Roswell Road area?
It's the same area.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that in Fulton County?
Yes, it is.
So once you received that call and went to that address, what did you do once you arrived on scene?
I was briefed by the shift lieutenant Ramiro, who was working the scene location, and I received a quick briefing. I learned, and I'm going to speak I'm going to break it up for the translator. I learned that a person had been shot in the leg. Patrol had tried life-saving techniques to applying a tourniquet. And I learned that 2 people had stayed with the truck and had been transported to the Sandy Springs Police Department for further interviewing.
Okay. And you mentioned the truck. What kind of truck was it?
Yes, ma'am. It was going to be a Ford F-250. I'll give you the specifics. Pardon me one second, and I'll redirect exactly to that.
Ms. Chavez, is it too fast or is it good?
You want me to get closer or both?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better?
Can you hear me? Is that better? I'll speak up.
This was a Ford F-250 displaying Georgia license plate. T is in Tom, F is in Frank, Q is in Queen, 4435.
Okay. And while on scene and after being briefed, what did you do next?
We conducted the preliminary investigation and basically what we were doing was holding the scene of the truck. And so I conducted a plain view of the area, did a basic quick canvass while we were waiting on a search warrant to be obtained for the searching of that vehicle.
Okay. And at that time, had you identified the passengers in that vehicle?
They had been identified by patrol. Me personally, no. I just got there, so I hadn't met or spoken to any of them.
All right.
But the answer to that question will be yes. Patrol officers had met with them.
Okay. And once patrol officers made an identification of the person that was shot, where were they positioned in that car?
The person shot was driving the truck.
All right. And then where was the other passenger seated, according to the investigation?
In this case, the defendant was the front right passenger, and the other person known to the investigation was located in the rear passenger side, to my knowledge.
Okay. Now, once you began to canvass the area, secure the area where the Ford truck was located, what did you see?
I was looking for camera evidence to see if it had captured anything from the surrounding businesses. And I also looked specifically around the truck. I was able to see a live ammo round, a 40 caliber ammo round outside of the truck. And remember, the doors are open, so you can see within. Of course, we weren't looking with, digging around or anything like that, but I had made mention of the ammunition that I found.
Okay. And you said that was outside on the concrete. What side of the vehicle did you see that?
Passenger side.
Was it rear or front?
It was in the rear portion, if you're asking where it was in proximity toward the truck.
Absolutely. Did you observe anything else?
I was basically just doing some on scene. I was talking to the female police officer that rode up initially. She, trying to find out more about the shooting victim, what had happened. Basically, she pulled up and was kind of dumbfounded by this. This was nothing more than a vehicle hazard, basically a vehicle parked in the middle of the roadway. So she was kind of catching me up to what she saw, what she observed, and what she had done.
And what did she tell you?
Basically the same, that the person she couldn't have a conversation with, he had lost consciousness. She saw blood spurting from the person's leg, and that's when they applied tourniquets and went into life-saving measures at that point. She also said that there were other people that were located, the two persons on the outside of the truck. And that they were on I believe if I'm going from my memory, but again, that they were located on the driver's or the passenger side of the truck, which is what I inferred.
Okay. And who is this detective? What's the detective's name or officer's name who was conveying this information to you?
The name of the patrol officer, and I'm going to try to get her name correctly, but her name is, I'm going to spell that for the record, spelled D as in David, E as in Edward, A as in Adam, M as in Mary, I as in India, C as in Charles, I as in India, S as in Sam. Diamices. I don't know her personally, and again, I have very little contact with patrol, so
Okay.
if that makes sense.
And so now you've gotten this background information. Did you in fact see anything else around the vehicle, or anything in plain view in the vehicle?
Again, the ammunition, I saw what I believe to be ammunition. I saw a weapon located in the rear passenger floorboard. And again, but other than that, we do a very quick perfunctory plain view look into the vehicle.
Okay. And at this time, were the two individuals that were riding in the vehicle, had they been secured or had they already been sent to Sandy Springs Police Department to be interviewed?
That's accurate. They went to the police precinct.
All right. So after they were taken to the police precinct and they were out on the scene, did you happen to look for any surveillance videos?
I did. I looked, there was one business open, which was the Love Shack. I would learn that their camera evidence had no evidentiary value, that there was nothing, and that was actually open. There was a person I was speaking with. But then there was two closed businesses with cameras that would appear to be in good proximity to where this truck would come to a stop.
All right. So it would be safe to say that at this time you're conducting an investigation regarding a shooting. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. And then after that, what happened in terms of your investigation?
Well, we waited on the detective that was working at the precinct, and just to kind of give you like a way that things work. They're being fed information, the detectives from on scene, and they apply for search warrants. In this case, we were getting one specifically for the interior of that truck. We learned that the information had been sought and obtained for a search warrant for the truck. And at that point, the CSI detective, Detective Warner, began his investigation. I'm a complete backup to him. Of course, we don't touch anything. We're looking for DNA evidence, all kinds of things that can be clouded or polluted. So basically, I was kind of backing him up, whatever he needed.
All right. And you said you actually search warrants were obtained.
That's correct.
And when were those search warrants obtained? That day on the 12th of October?
Yes, ma'am. In fact, well, let me clarify. I can, if I may, I'm going to refer to the search warrant itself because I know we were getting close to whether the calendar flipped to the 13th. So that I don't recall exactly the date, but I will tell you right now. Okay. It appears that this was the search warrant, and the timestamp of this search warrant, it shows to be on October the 13th. 2022 at 12:13 in the morning. So just after the change of the date.
And was that for the vehicle?
That is for the vehicle, yes.
Okay. And once the search warrant was obtained, was the search warrant executed?
Yes, it was.
And what was found as a result of that search warrant?
In this, it was a two-part search warrant, basically insofar as Detective Warner, he did what was called a Faro scan, where he scans the vehicle, and he also he received the weapon that I could see in the back seat. Okay. And I know that he had also listed in his search that there were other weapons located. And again, like I said, I just back him up basically if he needs anything. So the search warrant's conducted primarily by Warner. So he's preserving his own evidence as he goes along. I know there to have been ammunition and additional weapons located in the car, as well as a cellular phone.
Okay. And then at that time, the two passengers that were inside of the vehicle, had they been identified once they were at the Sandy Springs Police Department?
Yes, they were.
And who were those individuals?
Pardon me, let me go back. The defendant seated there, I was Yair, and I have Franco hyphenated Arco.
All right. And who was the other passenger?
And let's see if I can refer back to my notes on that. See if they have them listed. I beg your pardon. Let me go to mine. He's not listed in the report by the officer there, so. Carlos Macedo Mayo is the best way I can, my best pronunciation.
Okay. And where was Yair Franco seated in this vehicle when this took place?
I learned him to be seated in the front passenger side of the Ford 250.
Okay. And once Mr. Franco was at the Sandy Springs Police Department, was he interviewed?
He was, yes.
Had he signed Miranda warnings and waivers at that time?
He did. This was from the other detective. Detective Voronkov had Miranda read in Spanish, and he signed the form and agreed to talk to him.
All right. And were those statements recorded?
They were, yes.
Right. And can you kind of give a brief substance of what the defendant, Mr. Franco, said during that interview?
Yes, I did watch this very recently. I watched both my initial interview and Detective Voronkov's, and basically he indicated that the crew of these persons, they worked together, and that there was a bit of confusion. We're working through an interpreter, but where the actual gunshot occurred, it was originally told to me that it's like he was on I-285.
Is that what the defendant told you?
I'm going off of Detective Voronkov's initial assertion. And so he had reported possibly from 285 getting onto Roswell Road. During my questioning, I went to clarify that because that's what I gleaned from the interview as well. Okay, was he on 285 to Roswell Road? Well, after watching it, it was further reported that I think that his interpretation was that he was on Roswell Road, which is consistent with the camera evidence that I had seen from another officer conducting a different portion of the investigation. We believed that truck to be traveling southbound on Roswell Road, north of 285. We picked it up on our cameras. So,
and when you say your cameras, what cameras were they?
LPR and flock cameras. We have Genetech. We have different cameras throughout the city.
Okay. And during the officer's conversation with the defendant, did he talk about what happened inside of that vehicle?
Yes, the general consensus was that in this case, the defendant said that the person had shot himself.
Okay. And did he mention anything about seeing a gun, the defendant?
To my recollection, he did. He did assert seeing a gun.
Okay. Would your report refresh your recollection about that?
Let me see if I may.
May I approach you just to refresh the officer's
Yes,
recollection?
ma'am.
Okay, and this was, again, I'm quoting Voronkov's in this. Okay, there you go. So again, this was a recollection of Voronkov's. He basically stated he heard a shot, and the victim stated something to the effect of, "I hurt myself." He stated he did not see the victim holding a gun.
Okay. So your memory is refreshed on that.
It is, yes.
So after that, was there another interview conducted by the other person in the vehicle, Mr. Macedo Mayo?
It was, yes.
Okay. And after that, what happened in terms of the investigation after those statements were taken?
The two, basically, this again was the emphasis, a portion of this investigation to which, a person was shot and would later learn to be killed. Detective Voronkov had informed in this case, the defendant, that we were taking the cellular phones pending this investigation. Again, like what I had seen on the seeing was weapons and ammunition, and I knew there to be more than one person in the car. So there was a lot of uncertainty, but again, this was in the infancy. We had no access to the cameras to see if it would tell us anything. And so we were just basically gearing up to be investigating this case further.
Okay. And where were those phones or the phones that were seized in this case? Let me ask you this. How many were seized in this case?
There were 3. There was the one located within the truck and both of the persons that have been transported, and including the defendant.
Okay. And where were those phones placed?
They were within the Sandy Springs property room and the CSI office. I'm not sure exactly if they went right to the Faro or the property room, but because they were taken by the other detective.
Okay. And the phones that were taken, you mentioned they belonged to, well, let's say that. Who do they belong to, the phones that were taken?
Yes, the phones were in the possession of Yair Franco. His phone was taken and placed in the property, and the same could be said for Mr. Mayo.
Okay.
Who was in interview room 1. Yeah.
All right.
And then, I'm sorry, and the third phone was the other phone that was recovered within the vehicle
Okay.
and believed to be the victim's.
Now, once you determined that, let me ask you this, when did you determine or learn that the victim in this case had been deceased? Because you mentioned that in your testimony just now.
Yes, the victim in this case, we learned, I knew throughout the early portion, he had gone to 2 separate hospitals. He originally went to Northside Hospital and then on to Grady. And I believe it was a few hours later that I would learn officially that he was deceased.
All right. And could you state for the record this victim's name?
Yes, in this case, it's Franco Luis Esteva.
Okay. And once you made that determination, what did you do next in the investigation?
Well, we continued to go with the evidence that we had, and that included, like the next day, now the businesses are opened up. So I went by to check camera evidence for both the Cricket Company as well as Il Forno Pizza, were within the surrounding areas as the Love Shack business that had cameras attached to the exterior portions as well as interior portions of the stores.
Okay. And at this time that you're checking cameras, was this the next day? You said October should be October 13th?
That's correct. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what, if anything, did you discover from reviewing those cameras?
I discovered through this that 2 people had left the scene of the truck. You can clearly see the car come into view, and it basically lurches to a halt and jolts where it's seemingly striking an object. And at that time, you can see doors opening and people walking away from the vehicle.
About how many people did you observe in that video footage?
From what I observed 2 people walking away, 2 people staying behind. And then, so it was my belief from the video footage that I saw, there was 5 total people at least in the car.
All right. And once you made that decision or that determination, did you review any other video footage out of the scene?
Well, I also reviewed Il Forno's. I saw Cricket's first, and then I observed Il Forno's, which was, in my opinion, is a better quality of camera. And the same applies. I saw persons exiting and leaving the vehicle. One looked to have like a guitar strung around his back. It's like you reach and got a guitar. And another went walking away as well. So they were never identified.
Okay. And at this time, had there been a determination of who may or may not have shot the alleged victim or the victim that was killed in this case?
No, ma'am.
All right.
No.
And when did you receive information, or did you receive information from the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office about this case?
I did. I contacted the DA, or I'm sorry, not the DA's office, but the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office on October the 14th, and I spoke with the pathologist that had performed the autopsy of the decedent.
Okay. And what, if anything, did you learn from that conversation?
Well, I learned one, and this was a little problematic at the time we didn't know where the clothes ended up. We couldn't find the clothes, which is it's quite important. You can see there's certain things, whether it's a press contact, you can infer anything, but you're looking for stippling, right? The blowback from the weapon, these types of indicators. So I explained to the to the pathologist what we had and what we don't know. Again, typically the first thing you do is remove clothing. It's believed that the Northside Hospital folks, because we had officers go to retrieve this clothing and it was gone. It's that they had thrown the clothes away. So I made him aware that, okay, this was evidence that just we can't provide to you. But he basically said where it looked like the bullet it was like a shot through the artery above and an exit wound through the left calf. So that's what I gleaned from the conversation.
Okay. And after you obtained that information, what next steps did you take in the investigation?
Well, I'd spoken with CSI Detective Warner again, who continued to work this case. He continued. So basically imagine he's conducting a search warrant in the middle of Roswell Road. Okay. So they basically made the weapon safe and they would take the quick scans, and he moved the truck back to the secured lot, or at least the towing company did. We had that truck moved back to the secured lot to where he could do a more thorough investigation of the bed, or I'm sorry, the cab and the bed of the truck, because there was numerous things in the bed. So, and I learned through Detective Warner, who continued on with that search, that he found another gun located in the bed of the truck. And that gun was found to be stolen, which he would confirm through GCIC.
Okay. So how many weapons total were found as a result of the search warrant executed on the Ford truck?
To my knowledge, it was 3 guns, if I recall correctly, again, without.
Okay. And once you all learned that there was a stolen weapon that was located in the bed of the truck, what happened after that in your investigation?
Well, again, at this point, the investigation it's problematic in that we have people leaving, we have stolen guns, and we weren't in the car to see exactly what happened. So basically, we needed to investigate this matter further. We know that criminal activity was afoot because a stolen gun existed within that truck. And so therefore, we continued to investigate, and I applied for the search warrants with the phones that had been left within the Sandy Springs property room.
Okay. And had you learned or discovered any evidence that potentially that the shooting actually happened inside of the vehicle?
Well, that was the only thing that could have been, just based on the positioning of the victim as the driver. There was no windows blown out, to my recollection. I can't recall, but all systems and everything that we had observed, all evidence would indicate that he was shot inside of that truck.
Okay. So now you've gotten a search warrant for the cellular phones that were obtained in this case, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what phone belonged to the defendant in this case?
Yes, ma'am. I'll go to the. Okay, so in this, it was a black Samsung Galaxy, and I have this labeled as Yair Franco cellular phone, and the search warrant inquiry into this phone was search warrant 031671.
And when was that search warrant obtained?
Let's see, this search warrant was obtained shows to be October the 14th at 11:57 p.m.
Okay. And then once that search warrant was obtained, what was the basis for, what were you all looking for in that?
Well, within my experience of shootings and drugs, these are things that you look for. We request images, we request messaging, we request phone logs, and that's what we look for. We're looking for anything specifically in messaging, maybe where it's, hey, that might indicate a problem that's had. There's with somebody that whether they're talking about shooting someone or if there's known drug abuse. People like to take pictures of money and drugs and things like that. So we use that. If there's probable cause to look into the phones, we definitely like to look and see if there's any evidence that would suggest a lifestyle to support someone getting shot.
Okay. And once you obtain that search warrant for the defendant's phone, what in fact did you discover?
Well, I was going through the image section, and it's pretty short when you go looking into it. So when you click on the intersection, it just basically shows small thumbnails of images, of just pictures that you would be taking. As I scroll down, it was a lot of images of pornography, in my opinion, legal pornography. It showed just seemingly adults or people over the legal age. And as I continued to scroll down, there was a conglomeration of just overt images of children. There was numerous pictures that I could see, and as I looked closer, I believed it to be a child, a prepubescent child. So I stopped everything I was doing at that point.
Okay. And once you stopped, what did you do after you stopped?
I went and rewrote another warrant for the images that I found, child pornography images.
Okay. So that means you went and got another search warrant to look specifically for the things you saw based off the initial search warrant to include child sexual abuse material. Would that be correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when did you get that search warrant?
If I may, let me refer back. Let's see. And so this search warrant was shows to be signed October the 18th, 2022 at 11:24 hours.
Okay.
And this was specifically search warrant SW-031718. And it too was for the black Samsung Galaxy, the same model. And
what did that search warrant seek to find?
well, it changed the scope now at the very least to the images, the child images of illegal pornography.
Okay. And once that search warrant was obtained and was it in fact executed?
Yes, it was. Yes, ma'am.
And was there a phone extraction obtained?
Yes, ma'am. This search warrant was basically, pardon me one sec. So this phone extraction was the one preceding. It was already a phone extraction of the phone. This was just granted my search of the phone, if that makes sense.
So I guess to go further into the search, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So when did you begin to review the extraction of that phone to look for child sexual abuse material?
It would have been directly after obtaining the search warrant. This was all done in one movement, so to speak. I received the warrant, and then I went back to the lab and continued the investigation.
And when you continue, what in fact did you see?
I saw additional images. I researched the chat logs, and I found a thread under the WhatsApp information, which showed that there was a conglomeration of seemingly illegal pornography.
And what is WhatsApp?
Oh, it's WhatsApp's it's a talking platform, an application where people communicate. It's a communication platform.
All right. And so now you're looking and you see a thread on the defendant's WhatsApp. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
And how were you able to identify that the WhatsApp that was on the phone was in fact the defendant's?
It's all a part of the extraction of the phone. So anything that is on that hard device that's being abstracted by the Celebrate system, it shows you everything that's stored within the phone.
Okay. Did it also show you the defendant's information associated as being the owner of that WhatsApp?
It shows the telephone numbers, and so that's basically another report that's done up by the CSI detective, but the phone numbers matched. Okay.
And the child sexual abuse images that you saw, when I know this might be a little uncomfortable, but for purposes of probable cause, I need to be able to establish what was actually seen. So there are 5 warrants taken in this case. Is that right?
That's correct, Your Honor. I'm sorry, Counselor. I'm sorry.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I'm so sorry.
If you could start with the first image that you saw on this thread from the defendant's phone that you described as child sexual abuse material.
Yes, I'm And I'm going to draw direct from if I may, I'm going to draw direct from the report because I don't necessarily, I don't have the image stuck in my brain, so I'm going to be reading a little bit. It shows the genitalia is apparently prepubescent and can be identified by the fatty tissue around the outer labia. The age of the female based on the image may be between the ages of 6 and 9 years old. And there's a white fluid-like substance on the female genitalia. On the right side, now they're split screen pictures. So basically that's to say that there's two pictures on one image. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. On the right side, there's an overlay of a female child. Child appears to be between the ages of about 2 to 5 years old. It can be indicated by small proportionate facial features, excess fatty tissue on her left hand, which is visible. I do remember this, that the child had pigtails and she's basically holding a penis near her mouth.
Okay.
And that was the first. Do you want me to continue on with the 5?
Yes, we have 5 counts, so please.
Okay.
Second image, please.
In the second image, female child is in the center of the image with her legs spread and pinned back, with her genitalia on complete display. She appears to be between the ages of 3 and 6 years old. The proportion of the child, it shows it's hard for me to explain, but looks very, very young, extraordinarily young.
And how would you know that based on your?
I have children, if that matters. But again, we're talking ages below 5 years old. There's absolutely no development that would indicate that the child is of post-pubescent age.
So for example, no pubic hair, things like that.
Correct.
Okay.
There was no pubic hair. In this case, you're able to see 2 images of 2 males over the child where she's covered completely in semen. And basically you're unable to see the face of the males, but you can tell that they're grown men just based on their genitalia.
And that's the second image.
That is the second image, yes.
What is the third image?
The third image, there's again 2 images spliced into one. And the left image shows a child wearing a pink T-shirt with animals printed, wearing panties, seated next to an adult male. The male's in a seated position, wearing no shirt and a pair of shorts. The child appears to be approximately 4 to 6 years of age. In this case, she's clothed. She's wearing a dress and a shirt and panties. And this was not. In this case, it was rather weird looking, in my opinion. I can't describe it any other way, but that I didn't see anything overtly illegal about that. However, on the right split screen of that same image, on the right, it shows a child on her back exposing her vagina with a male penis inserted into the female child's vagina. The child's prepubescent with the fatty tissue of her outer labia, absence of pubic hair and development, small body proportions.
All right.
Child's wearing a black and white T-shirt with the clothing pulled up toward her midsection. It appears that she's looking at an electronic device.
If you can go to the fourth image.
Okay. Another split screenshot. And the image on the left shows a prepubescent female ranging from approximately 8 to 12 years old. There's a male's head. All you can see is the back of the male's head that's in that's basically, it's in her pubic region. It's almost like providing oral sex is what the connotation would look like to me. She's standing with her right leg over his shoulder. And the image on the right hand is a picture, shows a male from the navel down with his genitals visible. The child's face and hand are closed to the male's penis. The cheeks of the female child appear to be concaved to indicate a sucking action. The child's hand is near her mouth, obstructing the view of what is in the child's mouth. However, it's reasonable to assume there's a penis. In this case, the child appears to be roughly 8 to 12 years old.
Okay. And you should go into the last image, the fifth image.
Yes, and this image, picture shows to be a split screen again with three different images depicting female children engaged in sexual acts. The image on the left shows a child to be holding the shaft of penis with her left hand. The male is lying on his back with no clothing displayed, and the child is seated on the bed in an upward position, somewhat hovering over the male's genitalia while clutching his penis. Her mouth is roughly 2 inches away from the male's penis. She appears to be approximately 6 to 10 years of age. On the other side, the right side of the split screen, it shows a prepubescent child lying on her back with her legs spread apart with her genitalia on display. Child appears to be between the ages of 4 to 8 years old, which can be indicated in the excess fatty tissue of the outer labia and a small proportion of her waist. An adult male penis is in view at the bottom of the image, and the glands of the penis are pressed against the vagina of the female child. Open penis shows to be inserted. Shirt of the female is pulled up near her chest. The adult male and child face is not in view in this image.
Okay. And based on, let me strike that. So were all of these images viewed and seen on the defendant's phone?
Yes, ma'am.
Were they all seen through this WhatsApp application?
Yeah, I looked on to to that portion of the phone under the messaging, and it was like I said, under a message thread. But what happens is was able to find the conglomeration of the pictures, I guess, within that app. And because there's a section you can hit on the Celebrate extraction, which just shows attachments. And it just showed a long line of several attachments. There were other images, but these were the 5 that I found, I guess, the most egregious, the ones that I could describe the best. But there were other images within that thread.
Okay. Was there other identifying evidence on the phone that linked this phone to the defendant, Mr. Franco?
Well, there was pictures of him. He's pictured throughout the image section. And, you know, in his case, again, he's above age, which is fine. I have hold no opinion, but he's naked a lot within the pictures. I guess it's his girlfriend that he would tell me later that's sending him nude photos. She's above the legal age. But ultimately, in my investigation, I found there to be the link between that WhatsApp thread and the images that I saw within his image section, if that makes sense.
Yes. Okay. And then what did you do after reviewing all of these images on the defendant's phone?
Well, as I described earlier, I'm a fraud detective. I reached out to ICAC trained detectives that could come and help me process the evidence properly.
And what is ICAC? I'm sorry.
Oh, Internet Crimes Against Children.
Okay.
And so they could help walk me through this having to explain this was new hat for me. You know, I understand the concept, but basically it was my first case in handling such an investigation. So that's what I did. I reached out to elicit the help from a former detective who's now with Cobb County, and she came over and we reviewed the case, and that's what I did.
And did you execute or obtain arrest warrants after that?
I did obtain the 5 images.
All right. And do you see the person that you've identified in this case and spoken about, the defendant, Mr. Franco, in the courtroom today?
Everybody remove their mask.
Yes.
Could you identify or point him out and identify an article of clothing that he's wearing?
Yes, he's the gentleman wearing a blue shirt with a gray undershirt, wearing a black mask between the lady and the gentleman sitting at the desk.
Okay. Your Honor, we ask the record to reflect that Detective Pearson has identified the defendant.
Noted.
Okay. That's all I have, Judge.
Mr. Nelson.
Mr. Rhodes.
Mr. Rhodes.
Thank you.
No, let's switch around.
Sorry.
Just don't forget about Ms. Chavez.
Yes. Going back Detective Pearson, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Going back to the incident in the car, was the firearm that was discharged recovered?
Well, at the time of the investigation, we didn't know which firearm it was. So there was firearms, plural, that were recovered. So we really didn't know which one at the time.
Okay. One of those guns, though, was in the cab?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Where were the other two firearms located?
There was, later it would be learned again, there was one that I know of that was, I believe, in the center console and definitely one in the rear bed of the truck.
Understood. And it was Franco Luis Esteva who was the driver of that truck?
Yes, yes, if I'm pronouncing correctly, and that was, yes, sir, that he was the decedent person that was shot and killed.
Okay. Was the ownership of the other two firearms that were not in the cab determined?
They were not. Like I said, the only thing we knew about the one was it was stolen out of North Carolina. I put a request in for that, for the report about that weapon. And typically, when you run a firearm, it just basically comes back as no record, not stolen. It won't come back. Like in my position, if you had mine, if you ran one of my firearms at the house, it's not going to say it's the possession of Jason Pearson at this address. So you don't get that kind of a response.
Do you know who would have been the owner of the vehicle?
Not sure if the owner, I'm going off recollection here. Yes, it shows to be, I'm not recollection at all. I'm sorry. This is shown to be owned in the report by Gomer Narvaez Meza.
All right. And you mentioned that in subsequent camera footage that you saw, there might have been 5 people inside that vehicle.
Yes, sir.
One of them being the decedent and 2 of them were interviewed.
That's correct.
And the other 2, we don't know their identity and they fled.
That's correct.
All right. Going forward into the interview, this occurred at the Sandy Springs Police Precinct?
Yes, sir.
And a Spanish interpreter was present for that interview?
Yes, Officer Laura was assisting. He was an officer that speaks Spanish that was working that evening.
Right. Could you spell Officer Laura for the record?
I believe it's Lora.
All right. And you mentioned it was both yourself and Detective Ramkoff who interviewed the defendant?
That's correct. Detective Ramkoff had interviewed him prior to my coming back from the road when we were working the scene of the truck.
Were both of these interviews recorded?
Yes, sir.
And those recordings were placed into evidence?
They should be, yes. And the way our digital information like that is collected is from our unit's aide. And she'll typically, because we had a new camera feature, she'll check daily and put that with the case file for the DA's office, if that makes any sense.
All right. And had you witnessed Detective Ramkoff's interview?
I had not, no, sir.
Okay. So you have knowledge of your interview of Mr. Franco?
Yes, that's correct. I did watch Detective Ramkoff's interview before I came today, though.
Okay. During your interview, had you asked Mr. Franco for his cell phone?
I did not. I knew that Detective Ramkoff had already taken the cell phone.
Right. So Detective Ramkoff had taken the cell phone.
That's correct.
All right. Since you've now seen that interview, do you remember Detective Ramkoff asking Mr. Franco for his cell phone?
No, I believed he had taken the cell phone and had asked for the code, and basically had told him that he could pick that up at a later time during the course of this investigation.
Okay. Well, It sounds as though the Detective Romkoff did ask for the phone.
To the best of my knowledge, I can't, then now I would be guessing. I'm not sure exactly. In that I gleaned that he had taken the phone just basically through the natural steps of the investigation of the very unique and the very unique incident of the person being shot. So basically what we knew at the time is that we had a person shot and people in that car with them. So this is consistent with practices and where we will try to control and safeguard any and all evidence as investigations unfold.
All right. And Mr. Franco had been Mirandized at that point, correct?
That's correct. I did see that he was Mirandized.
All right. And this interview occurred on the morning of October 13th?
Yes, I looked and it looked to be around midnight. Again, I was still on the scene, but I did, after reviewing that, that's what I was, I looked at the time and it looked as though Detective Ronkoff had started interviewing him at midnight.
All right. And per your testimony on direct, the search warrant for the phone was obtained October 14th at 11:57 p.m.
Yes, that's correct.
And that was the first search warrant just for evidence related to the shooting?
Yes, sir.
And a subsequent warrant for the child sexual abuse materials was obtained October 18th
That's correct.
at 11:22 a.m.
Yes, sir.
After Detective Romkoff had obtained Mr. Franco's phone, at what point was it transferred to you?
Well, the phone was taken to and I'm wanting, I believe typically if I was to do it, I can't answer this because I'm not sure, but it wasn't basically. The phones would have been taken to the property room or the Faro container for the CSI room, if that makes sense.
All right. And do you remember the time in which you looked through those phones?
Well, I do know because as far as the time gap, it was going to be specifically your clients is going to be the morning, I believe, of the 18th when I had applied for the second one, because he had come after reviewing my report. He had come in on the 17th and this investigation was still ongoing. We hadn't received any of the information back. So we started looking, and plus that, I definitely would not have known the person to have been in possession of the obscene material, in my opinion, the day before. The day breaks when you turn in and when you execute a search warrant. In this case, as is shown 11 p.m. on the 14th, we will place the I will list as official execution when I place that warrant into the CSI box. Now, the Celebrite extraction can happen 2-3 days later when they get around to it. So that if you're wondering the delay, that would be it.
All right. Thanks. Yeah, I was curious about that. All right. You mentioned that the images in question were located in the image section of the phone.
Both the image and the chats.
All right. Was there any indication that those images were downloaded?
Yes, basically you can see where. And this was what I was talking to again with ICAC personnel. My question was, because again, I like to think from the opposite side, and this was addressed, and I hope you'll give me a little latitude answering your question. If you get, I would argue on behalf of any victim, or I'm sorry, or even suspect, if some knucklehead will say, sent you something that you didn't want to see, correct? Let's say that just somebody did that and you're like, oh my gosh, this is illegal stuff. I don't want it. I thought and questioned that. However, for that to be transferred over from the WhatsApp chat to the image section, it had to have been downloaded. That makes sense. You had to click on the link from the WhatsApp for it to end up in your image section of your phone. It just doesn't magically roll. So if you sent me a picture of SpongeBob, unless I click on that, it's not going to end up in the image link. That's what I clarified through the other detectives.
Do you have personal experience with WhatsApp?
I do not, no.
How were you able to, determine that functionality that you just mentioned?
As far as what I was just describing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, this was covered through, I spoke with with two different ICAC detectives specifically with that. Again, is it necessarily illegal for someone to send these images? In fact, even before that, it was expressed, hey, you can't possess this stuff on your phone. Also, though, it'll give a timestamp. There's different timestamps. You can see on the cell extraction of different times of when it's downloaded. It wasn't just all magically the same time of the thread. It had to be accessed. So the times would vary in short increments. So basically, it shows a date created per se, and it'll show you down to the second. And there were different date created times, if that makes sense.
It does. So you're saying that someone would have had to click on the link that was provided in that WhatsApp in order for those images to have been downloaded on the phone?
Yes, sir, I am. That was, and I, like you, just in fairness to your question, it's a good question in my opinion. I asked the same thing specifically, and that was the collective consensus. I am not a computer specialist. However, this was reiterated by people that are computer specialists.
All right. And in using WhatsApp, is a phone number typically associated with a WhatsApp user?
I think it can be. I saw different phone numbers. I'm not an expert on the social media and the communication. I personally just don't use the things. But like, say, for instance, if you can see messages from like Facebook Messenger. It's a different style code. It's not necessarily a phone number. In this case, there's different phone numbers affiliated, though, that I could see from the thread, I guess, of the numbers used.
Okay. So I'm trying to determine, is it more like phone number based or is it username based?
I would guess phone number, because I saw phone numbers, but like if you could see a person, if it's, say, for instance, my wife and we had WhatsApp, it wouldn't say her number, it would use her name because she's listed contact, I guess. If I know her specifically or if I know you, it would be your name and not so much your number, because that also shows on the different threads is different names.
All right. And this, particular thread that you were investigating, were you able to determine, like, was it sort of a group chat sort of thing?
It did. Yes, sir. It did look like a group chat and several numbers.
Yeah. I was about to ask, do you know about how many numbers, about how many people
just
were in it?
Guessing, but it's like a conglomeration of them. So we'll say, 8 plus, maybe there's several numbers, not just 2 or 3.
Okay. And one of those numbers would have been a number that belonged to Yair Frankel.
Well, now I would have to go back over. I would presume so, but what I would be doing just that, presuming. All I know is it was under his WhatsApp thread. And so I'm not sure if the specific users, without looking at it, I would have to go back and look at that. I don't know if his is listed within the thread, if that makes sense, or it's his name.
All right. And briefly, very briefly, just about the images. When you mention, you mentioned being able to identify the ages of females by fatty tissue around the vagina.
It was an approximation. I would give a span of what I believed that child to be.
Okay. As for, the source of, do you know who would have told you or trained you on determining ages of female victims based off of anatomy?
Yes, in this case, it was a female detective who I absolutely, enlisted her help on this case. She was trained in this and she absolutely, it did explain this. This is specific training that I did not have. So I very openly and honestly tell you, I reached out for help in this case.
Okay. And do you know the name of that female detective?
I was Detective Reich. She is with the Cobb County District Attorney's Office now.
Could you spell Reich for the record?
Yes, sir. It's REICH.
I'm wrapping up. Just need to see if there's one last thing that I need to know. The females depicted in these images, they're unknown, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
All right. One last question, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping back to the gun incident. To the best of your knowledge, or the best of your investigation, it seems as though the decedent shot himself.
It does. I believe there would be some evidence to support that. Again, what we were finding, I was speaking to the family, trying to do a bit of a background, speaking specifically to the girlfriend of him and what he was like, what he was about. Kind of, it would appear that he was a gun enthusiast. He liked to get a little silly, according to her, and things like that. Of course, at the time that all this began, this was all unknown.
Understood. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Pearson. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Counselor.
Any further questions from the state?
Briefly, Detective Pearson, through your investigation, did you determine by observing the WhatsApp strand, the username and associated, name and phone number that was associated to the WhatsApp as linked to the defendant in this case?
Let me see. Pardon me one second. Let me go back.
Would your report refresh your recollection?
Yeah, let me.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Let's see. Oh, yes.
And if you could
Okay.
just.
I'm sorry.
into the record what that username was for the defendant on WhatsApp.
Let's see if I may. I'm going to do a quick. Furthermore, observe the thread containing the overt from WhatsApp stating the following. Franco, telephone number 678-863-7917 at whatsapp.net. Owner.
Okay. That's all I have.
Anything else?
No, Judge.
That's it for this detective?
Yes, Your
All
Honor.
right,
Yes.
thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, argument.
We waive open and reserve closed, Judge.
Go ahead, Mr. Rhodes.
Judge, I would just briefly argue that there is not a strong connection between the ownership of these images and Mr. Yair Franco. Per testimony we just heard, the WhatsApp account involved a phone number. We don't know whose phone number that is, and the name Franco, which there are several Francos, and indeed the name of the deceased is coincidentally first name Franco. With that, Judge, I would just ask, that all 5 counts be dismissed just for lack of probable cause for possession.
What says the state?
Your Honor, we'd ask you find probable cause on all 5 counts pursuant to OCGA section 16-12, that's 100, subsection B8, for it is unlawful for a person to knowingly to possess or control any material which depicts a minor or a portion of a minor's body engaged in sexually explicit conduct. And specifically, sexually explicit conduct means any actual or simulated sexual intercourse, bestiality, masturbation, lewd exhibition of the genitals of the pubic area of any person. All of these things with a person under the age of 18. Clearly, you have evidence to support that. This is an interesting case where you have typically it's a cyber tip or a nick tip where things come. This is not what happened in this particular case. You have a defendant that was actually very cooperative actually with police during the investigation of a shooting. The phones were seized, the phones were collected for the purposes of that investigation. The defendant even actually gave his passcode to the officers to look in his phone. So unfortunately for the defendant, there are other things found in this investigation that brings criminal charges upon him today. We believe that there's probable cause to substantiate all 5 counts. We ask the court to find. Thank you.
All right. I found probable cause on all 5 counts. You want to argue for bond? He's been in 99 days without indictment. Sir, you're statutorily, I'm statutorily required to give you a bond. Boston, don't forget we got the interpreter. Wow.
No prior arrest.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Rhodes.
Yes, Judge. Mr. Franco is 21 years old. He's been living in Atlanta for the past year, specifically at 145 Northwood Drive, apartment P9 in Atlanta. He's been living there with his cousins. He does have, outside of those cousins that he lives with, 3 other cousins that live in Atlanta as well. He has no children. He graduated high school and has been working in construction and framing around the city. And well, Judge, he of course has no prior arrests. With clear to the court, there is a immigration hold on him as well. So should bond be set for him, he'll still be placed in ICE custody. Though he is, of course, required for bond, we do ask that, bond be set at an amount not to exceed $5,000 per charge.
All right, what says the state?
Your Honor, we understand that the defendant is entitled to a bond. We'd ask the court to keep taking consideration the following. We believe that the defendant has no real ties to the community. The actual decedent in this case was listed as a cousin, friend. They kind of go around the city doing odd jobs. We would think that's kind of suspect in our mind in terms of his flight risk. But we'd ask Your Honor to set a reasonable bond at least $10,000 per count. We'd ask that he have no contact and stay away from anyone under the age of 18 years of age. He is to use no computers or social media unless it's work related, and specifically not to be on WhatsApp as part of special conditions for bond and all the normal special conditions that the court orders, including an ankle monitor in this case.
No drugs unless prescribed, no alcohol, no weapons. Have an ankle monitor paid for by the county with a 24-hour curfew, except for court, meet with your lawyer, and medical. You cannot possess a smartphone. So you have to get a flip phone that doesn't have any sort of apps. No social media, No communication apps such as Snapchat and WhatsApp. No computer usage. No further contact with anyone under the age of 18. So I wrote them all crooked on my. When he gets out, that's where he's gonna live?
Yes.
Mr. Rhodes?
Yes, Judge.
I guess no further contact with your potential co-defendants, which would be the other people listed on Snapchat, but since you're not going to be, or WhatsApp, since you're not going to be on there, then don't be on there. So if I were you, I wouldn't communicate with them anymore. The state said 10,000 on each count.
Yes,
That's what
Judge.
you said? I say 100,000 on each count. 100,000 per count, $500,000. Best of luck to you, sir.
That concludes my business with the court. May I be excused, Judge?
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, excuse me, ADA, can we get your first and last name, please? I apologize.
Absolutely. It's Ernell, spelled Earnelle, last name Winfrey, just like Oprah.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, I think that's it, so I can stop the stream.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Your Honor. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, you too.